We are working on the laptop store project from the YByte Python curriculum available at www.ybyte.in. In fact, we are almost at the end of this now. We saw how we could use our query to find the laptops that meet the user's preference and pick them out into a list called, say, selected laptops. Now, the only, let's say, logical step left to be done is to display this in a nice way. Because, the selected laptops is a list of dictionaries. We have to find a way to display it in a way that the user can then understand. So really, that's the only challenge left, and that's what we're going to see in this. Not hard at all, quite straightforward actually. We'll see how we can format this nicely. The challenge really is that each of the let's say keys and the values are not of equal length. Now, one of the ways we could do this is that, look, we can just set that, okay, I'm going to print everything to a width of say 12 characters, and I know that 12 is good enough because all my let's say keys, values, everything comes below that. So we will do this in two steps. This code is not hard at all. We will do it in two steps in the sense that first we will print the heading and then we will print the contents of the list selected laptops. Now, just for reference, we had done something similar in the shopping cart activity also, because similar problem comes in there. But that time we fixed it. We sort of did this whole thing by just saying that, okay, let's just make sure that all the items are equal in length, both in the menu and the price. So that way, everything kind of aligned nicely. But here we're not putting the restriction. We'll do it sort of little bit more advanced from the code itself. So I come in here to my code. Now remember, my selected laptops contains, let's say, the laptops that meet the user's criteria. So I put a small comment here. Let's say displaying the selected, let's say, selected laptops, and let's do this in two parts. Let's say print the heading. Now remember, now first we will tell the player how many laptops have met the criteria. So I just put, let's say, an empty print, and I just go and say, well, look, your let's say len of, say, selected laptops, that's the length of the list, say, met your preferences. So laptops met your preferences. So we just tell the user how many laptops there are, so it kind of easier to understand. Let's say now I print the heading. Now remember, the headings basically are the keys of the dictionary, and which are also items on this list called specs, right? So I just go and say, well, look, let's say for KK in specs. Now notice I use variable KK in different contexts inside a for loop, so it doesn't matter. So now this case KK will come from specs, which is a list of all the keys of that laptop dictionary, right? So I just put a statement print, for example, KK, and I give an end, let's say for now, of a single space. Let's just, for sake of illustration, we'll fix this later. And in fact, if I were to do this, I can put a print in the end. When I run this piece of code, so let's say I keep saying none, none. I put some, say, preference for my CPU. Let's say none, 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 and none. Say none as well. It tells me 10 laptops met your preference. Now it, that's because the length of list is 10 perhaps. Now it has printed everything with a single space. But notice, for instance, CPU is obviously smaller than the screen size. Now I want to, like I said previously, I want to make sure everything prints with a width of 12 characters. In fact, we can do that by defining a variable here called, let's say, characters, right? And just say, well, it's equal to 0. Now what I'll be doing is that I'll be finding out how much is the length of KK, and I will accordingly decide how many spaces I would like to have, right? So I'll just put this, for example, right now, and is, let's say, no space here. I just go and say, well, characters, is equal to, say, len of, let's say, KK. So for example, for brand, it will be, 5, for model, it will be 5, for CPU, it will be 3, and so on and so forth. So I just find out how many characters are there on that, let's say, particular item. And I will then print, let's say, so 12 minus characters, Now 12 is just a number, so it kind of works well for me, times, let's say, a spacebar. Now remember, this times is working on a string, which means it's just going to be repeating that space that many times, right? And again, I just do an end of, let's say, just this, right? So with this, I can put a single empty print so that I come to the next line, and we can see this working. Basically, I expect this to be a little bit better spaced out. Everything becomes equal. Now, how have I chosen 12? Because look at screen sizes: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that's the longest. That's 10 characters. So I'm just saying, okay, let's make everything, let's say, 12 characters. Now 12 is a number. You can do something else as well. So let's say I say, well, I have no preference for, let's say brand. Here I say I want a W Intel i5. Say no preference for speed. Say 2 GB RAM. No preference for storage, so say none, and say none here, right? Now it turns out that it says 3 laptops met my preference. Now this looks a little bit odd, but all I have to do is just to expand this a little bit. You notice that everything is now well aligned. In fact, I've added just enough spaces to make sure they're all equal size. It doesn't look like this, but once the entire table prints, it will be more clear. Now obviously I need to go further and put the laptops that met my criteria, which means that I now must look at the selected list, selected laptops list. So in this case, I can see this selected, let's say selected laptops. That's, for example, this list of dictionaries. So I need to go through each of those dictionaries and print them in one row, which means that I need to now iterate in 2 levels. First, I need to iterate over the laptops in the selected list. Then I need to iterate on every laptop for all the keys. So basically for laptop 1, let's say like this, laptop 2 after that, and so on and so forth. I'm going to write this in basically a nested for loop. I'm going to say, well, for, let's say, laptop, let's say laptop in let's say selected laptops. So that picks out any one laptop from this, but now I must run, let's say, a for loop on this laptop. So I say for KK in, let's say, laptop. Now remember, first one runs over a list. First for the first statement, for statement here, line number 94. That's on a list. Second one is on a dictionary, which means we're looking at the keys of the dictionary. All I need to do is to say, well, print, let's say, let's say laptop, say KK. In fact, we can follow the similar logic here, and is say this, and I can again just do, in fact, I just take this piece of code over here. Just that I will, for the sake of clarity, I will have to do this for laptop KK, because now we are not interested in printing KK itself. We are interested in printing the value corresponding to this key, right? So I just find out, look, I print laptop KK, I find the length of that, KK, and accordingly, I go and add that many spaces. One very, very, very important point is that once a row is printed, I must go to the next row, which means this for loop prints like one laptop. At the end of this for loop, I must print an extra print so that I go to the next row. So this print has to be inside the for loop, and this is a very, very important point, right? So indentation has to be important here, has to be correct, and I think this should be it. When I, let's say, so let's say I say maybe WASR, let's say, well, none, say none, let's say none, say, let's say 2 GB, say none, none, none. It tells me, well, look, one laptop at your price, and you can see that this is being printed quite nicely because we are giving sufficient spaces, for example, to present all this. So basically my preference was WASR with 2 GB RAM, and this is what I got. Turns out only one laptop with my preference. This time, let's say I try WDELL. Let's say none. Let's say, well, none here. Let's say I want say no preference here, no preference. Let's say I want 512 GB of hard disk. Say none here. It tells me 2 laptops at your preference, and look, this looks quite nice. They are presented quite neatly, right? And basically, first laptop printed like this, second laptop printed like this. Now, this tells us one of the weaknesses of the program that we have seen this before. Clearly the second laptop has fairly strong specs, higher RAM, bigger screen size, but the price is lower. I mean, yes, the processors are different, but that doesn't quite justify, right? So that's the way we had sort of randomly created this list, but you get the idea that now this is presented in quite a neat manner. In fact, I can just maybe create one empty print over here. So I just go and put an empty print, say, over here. But this kind of completes the project, displays the laptops that the user has owned, and now from this point, user can go ahead and purchase, and a bunch of other features can be built in. I hope this has been an interesting journey. Obviously, this project is somewhat involved, but you notice how nicely it flows and how much we get to use dictionaries in this whole process. In general, if you think this way of learning can be interesting for you, look at our website, www.ybyte.in, because we learn Python programming through such fun activities. Take care. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.